The news updates. Tinubu. Supreme Court said forfeiture means paying a fine for an offense. Abdul Mahmoud says. Do welcome to today's news, and thank you for tuning in to the news. But don't forget to subscribe to this channel by clicking on the subscribe button and the bell for more updates. Now to the news details. Please listen carefully to the end. In a recent legal dispute between Peter Obi, the Labour Party presidential candidate, and Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the APC presidential candidate, the issue of Tinubu's eligibility to run for office has been called into question. Obi's argument is based on Section 137, subsection 1D of the Nigerian Constitution, which states that anyone who has been found guilty of a crime involving dishonesty or corruption is not eligible to run for presidency. The crux of the matter is the fact that Tinubu forfeited $460,000 to the US government in 1993. Obi argues that this is the evidence of Tinubu's involvement in the crime and therefore renders him ineligible to run for office. However, Tinubu's supporters have countered this argument by stating that forfeiture does not necessarily imply guilt or criminal involvement. This has prompted legal practitioner Abdul Mahmoud to weigh in on the issue. According to Mahmoud, the issue of whether or not forfeiture can be considered a fine has been debated before the Supreme Court. It cites a previous ruling in which the court upheld that forfeiture falls within the context of a fine. In a video shared on YouTube by Aisha Yusufu, Mahmoud explains that Obi's argument is based on the question of whether or not forfeiture can be considered a fine under Section 137, subsection 1D of the Constitution. While the Constitution does not specifically refer to forfeiture, it does mention fine. Mahmoud argues that the Supreme Court has already ruled that forfeiture falls within the context of a fine. Concerning the election, in which different issues has erupted, whereby the Labour Party presidential candidate, Peter Obi, has sought a legal redress and got to court based on evidences and different petitions against the ruling All Progressives Congress presidential candidates, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. One of the evidence and petition in which is in the news is about the forfeiture of $460,000 by Tinubu to the US government based on him being in association with drug trafficking. That Tinubu is a drug lord, and according to the Constitution, that said that anyone who has been found guilty of a crime which involves dishonesty or corruption is not eligible to run for the presidency. So this is why Peter Obi took the petition to court that Tinubu has been involved in crimes, in corruptions, and is not eligible to run for the presidency. So the main aspect there is the forfeiture of the $460,000 to the US government, whereby Obi argues that the evidence of Tinubu's involvement in a crime and therefore has rendered him ineligible to run for office. Whereas Tinubu's supporters have said that the issue is stating that the forfeiture does not necessarily mean that he is guilty of what he had done or is involved in criminal aspects. That the forfeiture means probably he paid for a fine of something he's supposed to have done and he did not do it. So the US government asked him to pay for a fine. But the issue is in the front of the Supreme Court, whereby they are debating whether it is to be considered a forfeiture or a fine. And this is where Abdul Mahmoud came in and said that the Supreme Court ruled that the forfeiture falls within the context of a fine and that Tinubu is not involved in criminal acts, is not involved in drug trafficking. We have come to the end of the news. What's your take? Do share your comment in the comment section. Thank you.